All right, so we will go ahead and get started here. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Indiana Arts Commission, or IAC, I'd like to welcome you to the FY25 Arts Project Support Workshop presented by our regional arts partners. I'm Kayla Myers, Senior Program Officer at the Community Foundation of St. Joseph County and co-chair of the Regional Arts Partnership, which I will share more on shortly. The Indiana Arts Commission is a state arts agency, and funding for the Arts Project Support Program comes from an appropriation from the Indiana General Assembly. The Arts Project Support Program, which is the focus of this webinar, is a core grant program of the IAC to disperse funds throughout the state to 501c3 nonprofits, units of government, and schools to support a specific project, such as a one-time event, a single performance, an exhibition, a workshop, or a series of related arts activities, such as art classes or training sessions that are open to the public. Arts Project Support is an annual program, and we'll discuss the timeline in a few moments. So for some general housekeeping announcements, we are recording today's webinar, which will be emailed to you in the next few days. We ask that all participants please mute themselves throughout the presentation, and any questions can be typed into the chat box. We will link a PDF of the grant application in the chat if you'd like to follow along later in the presentation. We will also allow a few minutes for questions at the end. If you need accommodations for the grant guidelines or the online application, please contact the IAC's Accessibility Coordinator, Stephanie Haynes, as shown on the screen. Live captioning is being offered during this webinar. You can turn on your captions in the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. If you need any help with captions or accessibility during the webinar, please send a private chat to Eric Ashby. So based on the population, the IAC has divided our state into 11 different regions. These workshops were previously held at the regional level, but the pandemic provided an opportunity to work together in recent years. At the end of the presentation, we'll provide contact information for all of the regional partners so you can identify yours if you are not familiar. I'm the partner for Region 2, and additional partners joining me today are Tisha Lee from Region 4, Sherry Wright from Region 6, Ryan Shelton from Region 7, and Ann McKim from Region 10. And then Eric Ashby will also be presenting the IAC's online grant system. So today for the agenda, we will be covering information again about the FY25 Arts Project Support Program. Specifically, we'll cover the program summary and timeline, the evaluation process, application information and evaluation criteria. We'll also view the online grant system, and then we'll go through some grant writing tips and finish up with grant recognition information, and then allow time for questions at the end. So Arts Project Support, or APS grants, provide funding to Indiana 501c3 nonprofit organizations, units of government, and schools to support arts projects that occur during the grant period of July 1st, 24 through June 30th of 25. Some examples of eligible projects include a one-time art event, a single performance, an exhibition, an educational workshop, or series of related arts activities such as art classes or training sessions that are open to the public, whether free or for a fee. This program provides grant awards of up to $4,000, and there is no match requirement. The maximum request amount was previously $5,000. However, with the new $4,000 maximum request amount, all grantees funded through this program will receive their full request amount in one payment at the beginning of the grant cycle. And just a friendly reminder, if you are an FY24-25 Arts Organization Support, or AOS grantee, you are not eligible for Arts Project Support. So for the FY25 program timeline, again, the funding period is for projects happening between July 1st of 24 and June 30th of 25. The deadline this year to request a draft application review from your regional arts partner is February 23rd. Please note that priority for draft reviews will be given to first-time applicants. The application is due March 7th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. We, of course, suggest that you submit a few days early in case you have questions. Grant panel reviews will take place between April 20th and May 4th of 23. And your organization will be notified prior to panels with your specific panel date and time. Award notification will go out no later than June 24th, and this will be emailed to you through the IAC's online grant system. If your project is funded, grant agreements are processed between July and October, and the first grant payment is typically deposited between September and October. Again, this will be the full request amount or award amount rather than in two payments like in the past. It does take approximately 3.5 months from the time of funding notification until after the recipient receives the payment. And then the final grant report deadline will be July 11th of 25. If your organization is awarded funding, we wanted to highlight a few requirements that you will need to follow if awarded a grant with funds being awarded through the state. So payments must be made by direct deposit, and your organization must follow the ADA and state and federal contracting requirements, monitor record retention and tax responsibilities, ensure grant funds are used for eligible expenses only, and the full requirements are, of course, outlined in the guidelines and then in the grant agreements. So for the evaluation process, applications will be scored on a 100-point scale. The scores will be utilized as part of a funding formula that determines the allocation of grant awards. Applications must receive a total score of 75 or higher to be considered for funding. Please note, due to funding constraints, information submitted in the application will be reviewed according to the following criteria: artistic quality for 20 points, artist benefit for 10 points, community engagement for 20 points, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access for 20 points, and then project management is the largest at 30 points. The above criteria also have sub-bullet points within the application with more detail. And I'm now going to turn it over to Tisha to share more about the application.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Kayla. I am Tisha Lee. I'm from Region 4, the Arts Federation, North Central Indiana. So happy to be here today. And my role for this webinar is to discuss sections 2 and 3 with y'all. So the first part, it's just a series of yes and no questions. Short answer, it's just relative to your 501c3, the history of your organization, project, artistic discipline, start and end dates, those things. Now, you do not need to be a 501c3 organization yourself in order to apply. You do need to act as a not-for-profit and do work, but you don't necessarily need that 501c3 status. In that case, you would need to identify a fiscal sponsor. And so that's essentially a not-for-profit organization that has agreed to sponsor your arts project. And so with that, we do ask that you submit a memorandum of understanding. And if that's something that you're not familiar with, the Indiana Arts Commission has done a wonderful job and shared a link. So you can see some typical language and whatnot, and you can tweak it specifically for your relationship with your fiscal agent. Next slide. And so this is the section where you'll upload your income and expense statement. Make sure that it's for your entire fiscal year. If you do have a 501c3 fiscal sponsor, you're going to want to upload their financial information. And just as to keep your mind and at rest, this information is only going to be reviewed and accessible to the IAC administrators. So it's not going to be shared with the panel. Now, section 3 is about the APS application and certifying accessibility. So as a public funder, the Indiana Arts Commission is required to ensure that each of its recipients are ADA accessible and that they meet all standards in Section 504 accessibility requirements. So there are a few key steps in this area. One, certifying the organization is accessible or able to make accommodations upon request. 2, what's the process in order to for a participant or attendee to request a specific accommodation if they need it? And 3, how your organization has reviewed the accessibility of its programs and facilities. Now, here again, the Indiana Arts Commission has done a wonderful favor for us and included a link, which is essentially a assessment checklist. It also has a terrific FAQ on accessibility, and that'll help guide your process so that you can actually assess your own facility and or program. So this will essentially lead you to the final details requested, and know that accessibility documentation needs to be retained for 3 years. Okay, and again, this section is only going to be reviewed by IAC administrators, not the panelists. And if you need further clarification or if you have any special questions, please contact the IAC Accessibility Coordinator, Stephanie Haynes. One point that I forgot to mention, but as you go into your uploading your income and expense reports, you do not have to do that if you're a university or a public entity. So that's all for those sections 2 and 3. Now I'm going to transition over to Sherry Wright from Region 6. Sherry?
Hey, hello everybody. Good afternoon, and thanks so much, Tisha. I am Sherry Wright, and I am with Arts Oleana in Terre Haute, and we are the regional partner for Region 6 with the Indiana Arts Commission. And I serve as the grants manager. So I'm the person, if you're in Region 6, that you'll be getting familiar with over the next year. So we're going to look at artistic quality and scoring criteria that panelists will use to evaluate your application. And I will remind you that a written list of these criteria can be found in the evaluation criteria PDF on the IAC's website, in the grant guidelines, as well as by clicking links within the application itself. And a really nice aspect is that the criteria sheet aligns directly with the application questions, which makes it really nice to review and make sure that you've hit all those bullet points as you complete your application. So section 4 of the application looks at artistic quality, which is worth 20 points, and artistic benefit, which is worth 10 points. Artistic quality is relative to the budget size of an art organization. So this relates to the idea that smaller organizations cannot necessarily provide the same services or opportunities in comparison to a larger organization. And to always remember that applications are not compared with each other, but each is based on its own individual merit and how they're meeting and how you're meeting the criteria. So for the part of your application, artistic quality will be worth 20 points of the total score. And the criteria includes that this is an artistic project, which obviously you're all, that's what we're here for, is to promote the arts throughout Indiana. Making sure that your goals are clear, tell why you're doing this project in your community. If the project's been done before, then you're using your past experience to inform this year's project. This part of the application, or this particular point, is worth 10 points on the application. The project description and artistic documentation demonstrate the project will provide the audience, the intended audience, with a meaningful, impactful, and quality artistic or authentic experience. This is where you use your passion to tell your story and be thorough and detailed. And this criteria point is also worth 10 points. In the next section, artist support. So this is the part of the application, also worth 10 points, where you will, and this is where the panelists will see and consider how your project will directly financially benefit and or support the work of Indiana artists. And those Indiana artists are defined as living and working in the state of Indiana. Now, there are so many possibilities of how your project can provide artist support. Being new applicants, I'll provide a few quick examples, and I'm sure you've got your own thoughts and are already processing how you're going to hopefully serve both your audience and artists in your community. You may use grant funds to employ an artist to provide programming, artist talks, presentations, performances, workshops, or you might have an arts festival where artists are able to get exposure and sell or perform their work of art. Artists may be included in a project but receive no financial compensation, such as a public art exhibition, where obviously the artist will benefit from exposure. A personal example that I like to use where no money is exchanged, but the benefit is great. We engage a guest juror for each of our exhibitions in our gallery, but we don't pay them, we don't give them financial payment, but we provide them with a solo show in our smaller art gallery so that they have an opportunity for exposure and also to sell their work. Now, these are just a few examples that I've mentioned, but there are many out there. You'll need to include in your narrative about your project, making sure your specifics, because you have to remember the panelists that review your application may have no knowledge of your application or your organization whatsoever. And even if they do, they're not able to share that knowledge with other panelists during the evaluation. You'll need to make sure you include those specific numbers and dollars that relate to artists, as well as documentation in the form of documents, websites that show the quality of the artists involved and makes the case of how the artists and the community are served. We'll move on to artistic examples. You'll be providing examples that demonstrate the artistic quality of your project. Or if you're proposing a new project, you could, so if you're proposing a new project, you might have a past project that is similar to where you might pull documents from that past project to help show the artistic merit. The main thing is to make sure that the examples that you provide are good depiction of artistic merit. You'll have the choice this year of uploading a single Word or PDF file, which could include images, newspaper clippings, whatever, but they must be merged into one file to be uploaded onto or into the application. If you're uncertain about merging, and sometimes, we just haven't had that experience, there's help for that. Obviously, you can talk to your regional partner, your grants program manager, or the IAC has a great link to a tutorial on the grant application resources page of their website. And then the other option that you will have, and you'll choose one or the other, either the document or to provide web links. And these could be Facebook pages, website, YouTube, audio, video recordings, whatever is best going to demonstrate the artistic quality of the project that you are proposing. Okay, I'm going to move on now to community engagement and idea. Okay, so this section of the application addresses communication, community engagement, and the idea plans. Each of these two areas is worth 20 points, and I want to remind you that there are built-in links that provide in-depth explanations and examples at the beginning of this section in the application. And I say wholeheartedly, you use them. They're wonderful guides. They are wonderful for informing you more details about both community engagement and idea. So make sure you have those on hand to refer to as you're completing your application. In community engagement, the IAC is asking for information to the extent to which there is an active two-way ongoing relationship between the applicant and the community in the planning, the participation, in the evaluation of the proposed activity or activities, which includes intentional strategies for inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, or our idea. The section of this evaluation of this application will be evaluated based on the extent to which underserved communities will benefit. And just as a reminder that we define underserved communities as people lacking access to arts program services or resources due to isolated geographic location, low income, age, race, ethnicity, cultural differences, disability, or other circumstances that are substantiated by the applicant. So that is the definition that will serve you as you complete your application. The project, number 2, the project is developed with and not for identified communities it will serve. It should be clear that the community that you are serving with your project is a part of the project. And this can happen in a lot of different ways. This can happen to focus groups in advance. This can happen to meeting, with particular organizations that represent or work with the population, perhaps that you're planning to serve. Perhaps you're wanting to target and really want to serve low-income families or children in your community. So you identify who are the groups that are already working with these people, and how can we learn more about them and what they might need, and maybe even meet with some of them to talk about our proposed project and how it might be received. Okay, and number 3, that the applicant has intended idea strategies to increase access, to address barriers, diversity of participants, or provide accessibility accommodations for underserved communities. So this is these are all those points within the whole evaluation section with community engagement and idea, and this particular criteria point is worth 10 points. And number 4 is that the applicant has a clear process for measuring the project's impact, worth 5 points, meaning how are you going to know, whether you've done what you intended to do with this project? Are you going to talk to people? You're going to have surveys, you're going to have, conversations later on, whatever it might be, you need to know that in fact that impact has happened, or if it didn't, or maybe you're on the way to impacting the way you like to, you need to make sure that is stressed within your application. Okay, and number 5 is about marketing. And so with your marketing efforts, you need to make sure that you include appropriate strategies that will reach those applicants that you're seeking, that you as the applicant seek to serve, and the projected participation figures seem reasonable with the audience that you're projecting to serve with your project. Again, I encourage all applicants, no matter how confident you feel and what your awareness and understanding of community engagement is, or the idea, principles, and practices, I encourage you to spend time reviewing the definitions and the information that's provided within the links of the application materials. The IIC also has pages on their website with information on these top topics. And just knowing that the Arts Commission is committed to community engagement and inclusion, diversity, equity, and access in the arts across our state. And this is an area of the application that you need to give close attention to. The narrative box for this question asks for information on the communities that you'll serve or you're planning to serve, how their input will be included in the development and planning of the project, the idea strategies and initiatives that you're planning to use, and the tools or methods that will be utilized to measure your project's impact. And certainly successful applicants will have read those narrative prompts and address each of them fully. Always feel free to reach out to your regional partner for guidance and/or feedback, especially for first-time applicants. All right, I think that concludes our coverage here, and I'm going to turn it over to Ann McKim from Region 10, who's going to talk about project management and budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. Hi, I'm Ann McKim. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana, and I'm the Regional Arts Partner for Region 10. So this section of the budget of the application, Section 6, covers project management and budget, and it is worth 30 points of the evaluation. So you might be thinking, why so many points in this section? Well, this is where the panelists are going to evaluate the likelihood that the project you're describing is actually what the outcome is going to be. So panelists will score to the extent to which you demonstrate the ability to successfully design and implement the project through effective planning, financial management, staffing, and evaluation. This section will be evaluated on the extent to which, one, there's staffing to carry out the project, and the lead staff is appropriately experienced for the project. Two, there is an appropriate planning process and timeline. And three, the project budget is well considered and reasonable. So your first narrative question here asks, who will make the project happen? You have wonderful program staff and volunteers. This is where you get to explain their roles and their qualifications. In addition to a staffing overview, be sure that you include the title, role, responsibilities, and relevant experience of the lead project manager. And it is okay if this is not a paid staff person. If you're working through through a committee or working with a lead volunteer, just be sure that you explain the credentials of that person who is in charge. You will also be asked to describe your timeline. This question is important for evaluation, but it's also a very helpful tool for ensuring that you have a clear vision of how your project is going to run from start to finish. Be sure you include information on your community engagement strategies in this section. This is, for example, if you're going to have a focus group or engage with other stakeholders, this is where you're going to explain what time and when you do that within your planning process. Please note that while your panelists are evaluating your organization based on this section, it is okay if you have to reschedule or shift timelines when you're actually implementing the project. We all work in the field and we all realize that small things can change. This is also the budget section, and the budget section is a common eek for grant writers, myself included, but I don't want people to be intimidated here. We are asking you to follow the instructions and provide your information with clarity. Be sure that you provide a balanced budget, that the income and the expenses match, and that the income and the expenses listed are related only to the project during the grant period. There will be links in the application to make sure that you are requesting funds for eligible expenses. Excuse me. This year, the IAC has significantly simplified the process by providing tables that will auto-sum your totals. So you'll enter your income, you'll enter your expenses, and you'll enter your in-kind contributions on separate tables. And at the end, they should all equal out. If you're still feeling nervous about the budget, be sure to reach out to your regional arts partner. We're here to help, and we certainly will not, you will not be the first person who's asking for just clarity or guidance. But again, stressing, be clear, be as accurate as possible with your budget. Now I'd like to introduce Eric Ashby, who will review the online grant system and take a look at the actual application.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you. I'm going to share my screen here with a view of the online system so we can run through that quickly. All right, so the link in the chat I just put in, that takes you to the logon page. And when you click that link, it'll provide a space for a username, which is your email, and a password. If you are a new applicant and you don't have an account, you will need to set up an account before you apply. If you're a returning applicant or you think your organization may already have an account, but aren't quite sure, please just shoot me an email. You see my emails right on the logon page there. And I can check and see if there's already an account there that I can just add you into, so you can also see some of the grant history from the organization. So happy to help you with that. Just shoot me an email and I can get you logged in. Once you log in, you'll come to a screen that looks like this. This is the applicant dashboard. And if you go to this little apply button right here, you'll see the listing of available grant opportunities, and arts project support is right here. I'll note a couple things. This button here, you can preview the application if you so choose. However, this will not, if you fill something out in preview mode, it won't actually submit. So when you're ready to actually start typing things into the application, you're going to click this blue apply button, which will then take you into the application. Before you get started with your application, at the top here, please double check that your organization information, including your address, your EIN number, and your contact info is all correct and up to date. If you are awarded funding, this is where we pull from to start making sure payments can get out the door. And so it's really helpful if this is accurate so we don't have to try to address it later. So that's first thing to check. Other thing to note is this button in the right-hand corner here is called Collaborate. You can use this if you're working with a couple people to complete the application. When you click the Collaborate button, it'll open up a window and you can enter the email address of the person you want to collaborate with and control different permissions, and it will send them an email directly with a link to access the application. So you can work with more than one person if you need to. Moving down into the application, there are these different sections that you can collapse and see. So it's not so many things on the screen. If you click into a text box and type something and then click out, it will automatically save for you so you can stop working on it and come back to it. I will note the character count at the bottom. You can't exceed it, and you certainly don't have to write up to it, that's for sure. Shorter is usually better for some of these things. So just be mindful of the character count there to give you an idea of length. Moving down into the budget section, I just want to highlight some of the tables that Anne was talking about earlier. Here, you'll just enter the number on the left and whatever description you want on the right, and it will auto total for you at the bottom. So you don't have to worry about doing any math or anything of that nature. It will auto sum, and you can just enter things in these tables. If you need additional lines for anything in the budget section, feel free to just shoot me an email and I will add more lines for you. And other than that, that's pretty much the application. If you have issues with the online system for any reason, please feel free to shoot me an email and I can help get that all worked out. You'll see since I typed something in, if I go back to my home page here, it should show an application that has been started. And you can just go back in and edit at any time. And so that is the online system. Like I said, happy to help with any technical issues related to this, but it should be fairly straightforward. All righty, that is all from me. Thanks so much.
All right, I think I'm next. We'll give it a second to pull up. Perfect. My name is Ryan Shelton. I'm the partnership manager and projects manager for Noblesville Creates. We're the regional arts partner for Region 7, which is Marion County and most of the surrounding counties. I want to go through some quick grant writing help and resources. Things you know, but there's a little stress in this, so it's always nice to hear these little things. Do not hesitate to reach out to your regional arts partner with any questions. That's kind of what we're here for, right? To help you get through the process. So we enjoy it. And I know, because I've worked with several of these people for a while, they've got a lot of knowledge. Keep in mind, the earlier the questions are sent, the easier for us is to find solutions. If you are a first-time applicant, we highly recommend requesting a grant review. Grant requests must be made by February 23rd and will be responded to in the order they're received. So get them in quickly. So you don't necessarily even have to get a full application. Like if you get most of it, just reach out, email your regional arts partner, and they can go through the application. They'll read it and get back to you with some feedback. We recommend reading the entire application before starting it. Make sure you tell the full story, provide examples, and assume the panelists have no familiarity with your organization. So you want to be concise, but provide enough detail to fully answer the questions and address the criteria. And this is worth saying, if you do a lot of grants, don't just plug in the answers, because our questions will be a little different. So make sure I notice panelists a lot look at very specific questions and how you answer those specific questions. Longer does not mean stronger. Eric mentioned that a little bit too. So yeah, they're not looking for long. They're looking for concise and detailed. And don't hesitate to show your passion for your project and how it reaches into the community, because that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to strengthen the arts in our community. Eric mentioned this as well. Keep in mind the character counts in each response box. And finally, be sure to have your application edited and revised by others in your organization, or even better, someone else to help you outside your organization. It's not really something the reps will do edit so much, but get somebody else to help with that. So I highly recommend that. Most of you know to do that. I want to talk a little bit about grant recognition. If you are funded, here are some key elements to remember. You will need to provide funding credit to the Indiana Arts Commission and your regional arts partner on promotional materials. There's a link on IAC's website with the requirements and logos that can be downloaded, and you can reach out to your regional arts partner if you need help with that. You'll be asked to provide proof of funding acknowledgement with your final grant report. So usually like it's a picture of a program or a sign that you have, something like that. I did get an audio recording once of somebody announcing during a ballet, which I thought was kind of fun. Let your audience know about government support for cultural experiences. For example, at an in-person event, you should say activities are made possible in part by the Indiana Arts Commission, which I just said. And finally, continue inviting legislators to your events, whether virtual or in person. If you have any questions about providing credit, you can refer to the IAC's website or also reach out directly to Connie Brom, IAC's Marketing and Communications Director. I want to talk briefly about a very specific requirement for Marion County. So this is for organizations, groups that are housed in Marion County only. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that detail means, just so you can hear it from me. So I highly recommend reach out. It's a new addition to the application. One of the IAC's funding priorities for the FY25 APS program is increasing access to art opportunities for Marion County residents with the least access. To be eligible for funding, applicant organizations in Marion County are required to direct their projects to these individuals, inclusive of, but not limited to, veterans, individuals in high poverty areas, persons of color, individuals with disabilities, those living in institutions like retirement or healthcare facilities, incarcerated population. You need to describe how your project provides access to arts opportunities in Marion County residents with the least access. It can't be like in addition, like, oh yeah, people that in wheelchairs are welcome to come. It needs to be much more directed, and you have to have a much more specific plan for your program, for your event, your class, whatever it might be, directed at one of these populations or one like that. Before we move on to QA, I want to share our information. She'll know who to reach out to. This information is also in the APS guidelines and the IAC website. I think we're ready for Q&A.
But probably it wasn't bad.
Okay, thanks so much, Ryan. I've been answering some questions in the chat. So some of those I will probably share out that might apply to, that might be questions that multiple people have. And we will be, I know there were a couple questions about sharing out the recording. We will share out the recording, and the IAC team can confirm, but I think in the past that we've typically included the slides as well, because I think someone had asked about those. So there will be various resources that will be shared out in the next few days in a follow-up email. So one of the questions was asking if a series ran from June 15th through July 29th, but they would only use grant dollars on expenses incurred after July 1st, if this would be acceptable. So yes, funds must be used for expenses taking place during the grant period, again, which is July 1st of 24 through June 30th of 25. Let's see. Some additional questions. So another question was common ways that people lose points on their application that could be avoided. What comes to mind initially for me, and then I'm hoping some of the other regional partners might jump in, would just be not answering the questions and not providing enough detail. That's typically what comes to mind. Are there others? I don't know, Anne, Sherry, Tisha, Ryan.
I would definitely, those criteria, points are there. Those are what our panelists are evaluating your application on. So when you look at the criteria and see, yes, I've answered that the best I can to the best of my knowledge for this project, that's going to certainly help you stay right on, right there with the points. the criteria, I mean, that's what makes it, I think, so easy, because it's right there in the application. You can look at your questions, say, did I address this? Did I address this? And always, 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 run those by your partner, regional partner, say, that's what we're here for. We're here to try and help make sure you get that funding. So.
Thanks, Sherry. And then another question that came up, someone noted Diana, that she received the FY24 Lifelong Arts Indiana grant, and if she can still write for this one. So individual artists cannot apply for project support grants. It needs to come from a 501c or 501c3 organization, a school, or a unit of government. So if you're an artist working with an organization and they are applying for the grant, then that would be acceptable, but you cannot apply as an individual. And then as far as the regional arts partner map, that was linked in the chat if you're still wondering who your regional arts partner might be. And we definitely encourage you to connect with them. I believe the Marion County question was answered by Ryan.
Kayla, you want to remind people that, in the guidelines, all of the partners are all listed with their contacts in the guidelines. So there's a lot of information in those guidelines. So make sure you've reviewed those.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll send a follow-up email with all those items linked to the main landing page for project support as well, which is in the chat. Another question is if they need a website, the IAC grant portal registration required one. I don't know, Eric, can you answer that?
Yeah, if it's not letting you through without a website link, just shoot me an email and I can help push that through for you.
Great.
There was a question about if you can apply, if an organization can submit an application for two separate projects. So I think you can only submit one application, one proposal. Now, can it encompass two separate projects within that? Yes. I would say, however, as a strategy for the strongest application, that you focus in on one, because the funds are fairly limited and $4,000. So what can you do the best? However, again, you may opt to include both in your proposal, but it's only one proposal.
Thanks, Tisha. I'm just looking at some other questions here. So an organization that's a 501c6 nonprofit works directly with the town of Danville. So I would think in that case, it would probably be best if the town of Danville is the applicant. And I would follow up with your regional partner just to clarify that when you start the application. We will send out web links, so we'll be sure to include those. Film and television projects. I would follow up with your partner, probably need more detail on that. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump into about eligibility there.
Because of being a public component and being open to the public so during the period, that's usually the big issue with that.
Yeah, there has to be a public component. And then another great question, if the 501c3 has to be an arts first organization, or if it can have a more general mission that includes more than arts programming. So as long as you're a nonprofit, you do not have to be considered an arts organization as long as the project itself is an arts project that involves the community. Does anyone have, any other partners have a great example of a project that was approved? I know there's a great variety of projects. Tisha, do you have anything?
Yeah,
So I had
sure.
one, then I'll let Tisha go, sorry. With project funded was Front Porch Festival last year, which is a big event in Noblesville where they pay several bands, so they were able to pay local artists. and it was community because it was open for free. So it had some of those big components in it, and then well organized. Those are the real big three keys for it.
Keisha, do you have one you want to share? Or?
Sure, there are a couple. One of my favorites is the Tipton Pork Festival. They have an arts component where they have an arts market. And they set up an area for artists to sell their work, and they've received funding in the past to enable that to happen. So, and it's a pork festival, so you get to eat and buy art. So
Awesome, thank you.
Kayla,
Yeah.
I wanted to address, there's a question that says, did the guidelines say that grant funds cannot be used to compensate an artist for their performance? And no, definitely, you know, if you're paying an artist to do whatever for your project and you're going to utilize some of the grant funds, then we're all about, you know, keeping our Indiana artists healthy. So for sure. You know, maybe it could be a teacher or an artist that comes in and teaches programs in a community center. It can be, you know, it could be a musician, it could be a visual artist, whatever. But sure, we want to get dollars to our Indiana artists for sure.
One with a marginalized community. Yeah, that's definitely discussed after, because we would try to look for ways. And did you see there was one about mental health coping and self-guided? How would we address the artistic quality? My take on that, it's not the artistic quality of the finished product so much as who is teaching it. Like, you're not just going to get a guy that's never done art to go in and teach these workshops. You're going to get somebody that's an artist. So that's where some of the artistic quality would come in. Somebody that's trained to work with that population and trained in the art. That would be the artistic quality, not so much how great the final project is per se.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ryan. And then someone else had asked about getting a match from the community foundation. Should we include that in the project budget? Definitely. So you're wanting to include all of the income sources and all of the expenses for the project in the budget.
Patricia, did you have a question? I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, I think you said earlier that if you were a college or university, you did not need to upload a profit and loss statement. Was that correct, or did I?
No, you're correct. That's what I said.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public high schools would be eligible to apply as long as there is a component that's open to the public. And yes, your provided budget should include potential funding from the IAC as an income source. And there should be instruction on that within the budget section of the application.
Taylor, there's a question up above that. Would it be appropriate to allocate all $4,000 to a local artist in its entirety? And then the assumption would be that they would utilize the funds to complete the project, or the artist need to submit a detailed budget outlining all expenses specifically that org would then submit.
I think you can just go easy, right? I mean, if you're contracting with the artist, then you're entrusting them with them utilizing the funds to get the project done. So I think that would be simple enough and listed as artist fees within your budget.
Mm-hmm.
But you would still need to show, like for the project management, how your organization is helping to manage the project. Because it wouldn't be just about the artists, because the grant's not for individual artists.
Okay.
Can I just jump in on that question?
Yeah.
Quickly, Kayla? So for the question of would it be appropriate to just allocate 4,000 to a local artist, I really do want to stress, and this is the workshop for first-time applicants for the specific grant. You all probably write grants in other spaces, but on the off chance that you don't, look at the application as a planning tool for you, in addition to being a way that you can possibly, get some funding. But if you do not have a budget or an understanding of how that $4,000 is going to be spent by the artist, to me, that would be a sign that your project needs to have a little bit more planning. Now, it's possible that that's not really what you're asking. You're like, I know how every penny is going to be spent. It's just easier for me to put 4,000 artist fee. And that's fine. And like, as Tisha said, that sometimes simplicity is best, but the questions that we're asking are ways to make sure that the project is being managed strategically and that there's a great chance of success. So if you don't have answers to some of these, I encourage you to sit down and really think about it, regardless of whether it's for the actual, like for this or for something else, because it will help you build a better project. Having a clear idea of your budget helps you build a better project. And so, I know that that's not necessarily like the reason that we're all here, but there are a lot of benefits of working through a funder's application and thinking about your project in its entirety in that sense. So.
Thanks, Anne. Very helpful. So I know I've had quite a bit come in. I think most of the other questions were answered. As far as including additional funds, so there is no match requirement. So you won't be scored based on whether you're including other funds or not. It's more looking at, is your budget detailed, summed correctly, accurate, more so than what your other funding sources are. As far as it being too cumbersome for the panel, they're used to looking at these things, so just include what it is, and have it be accurate with all the income and expenses. And then the next question is if the IAC provides other types of grants that exceed the $4,000 cap. So the Arts Organization Support Program, it's an off year for that, but those grants can be larger in amount, but those are for organizations that have arts as their primary mission, and a detailed list of eligibility requirements, and more information on that is also on the IAC's website for that program. But you can only apply to one or the other, arts organization support or arts project support. And again, for organization support, you have to have arts as your primary mission. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So again, we will send a follow-up message with a lot of great resources. And if you have additional questions, because we're getting close to the hour here, just feel free to reach out directly to your regional partner. And we are all more than happy to help. And thank you so much for all the work that you do in your communities. Have a great evening.